Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Help Desk Dispatch. My name is Mitchell Rollo, and I'm a software training consultant here at ConnectWise. And joining me is
Lynette Polson, also a software training consultant at ConnectWise.
and we are excited to dive in on how you can really develop your dispatching process within ConnectWise Manage, but also why you should if you're not already. To do that, we'll dive into these 4 topics you see right here. I'll kick us off with our dispatching best practices. From there, we'll elaborate on what the pre-processing process is for tickets, something that I hope you're all doing today. And if you're not, hopefully we can persuade you to start taking advantage of. From there, we'll elaborate on some of the tools you have available to manage your team effectively. And then finally, dispatching does not end after you've assigned tickets out. You also need someone to make sure that tickets are being worked and are moving through your service process effectively, and that's where ticket management comes into play. And walk through what process that looks like, what that process looks like, and some of the tools and tricks available. So to start us off, I want to tie in to our dispatching best practices, and we have 5 best practices here at ConnectWise, and 2 of them tie in very closely to dispatching, in my opinion. But before we dive too far into that, I do have a question for all of you, and that is, how are your tickets being assigned today? This will help us kind of get a feel for where our audience is right now. What does your process look like? Go ahead and chime in either the questions or the chat pod, and just let us know what your process looks like for making sure that tickets are assigned out to your team. Someone says we have a coordinator. I'm guessing that person is responsible for making sure all of those new tickets do get assigned to a resource. Centralized dispatch by a dispatcher. It's being assigned out through email. I manage the dispatching myself. We have our service manager do the triaging. I hear that fairly often. The help desk is responsible for assigning out texts. Text largely just grabbed from the triage as it's available. I hear that very often too. So we are really getting a wide range of responses in here, and I like to see that. There's no one right or wrong way to go about this. Everything does have its advantages and disadvantages, but I want to go ahead and stress some of the advantages of a centralized dispatch. And to do that, I want to highlight some of the problems I personally have run into with self-dispatching. Before I joined our education team, I actually started at ConnectWise on our support team, and we had a centralized dispatcher handling out assigning tickets to everyone. As soon as I came in for the morning, I already knew which tickets I'd be working and in what order. However, when we were working on the weekends, we didn't have that centralized dispatcher, so we were responsible for grabbing tickets ourselves. And I thought I would like this better. I thought it would be easier, but I was shocked how much time I ended up spending deciding which ticket to work. Peeking into this ticket, seeing what's happening. Okay, maybe that's not a good fit for me. I'll move on to the next one. And by the time I assigned a ticket, I've wasted 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And if that's happening every ticket I work, it's really slowing me down, ruining my efficiency. And as a team, we're just getting less done overall. Now, you might be saying that doesn't happen to my team. My team are strict, they're reliable, they always do the first in, first out. That's good, but again, sometimes from experience, I've seen people, and I've seen it happen to myself, you find yourself skipping over tickets that are perceived as hard. It might not be hard, but a hard ticket might be one that just doesn't have a lot of information. Customers are not always the most accurate when they're describing what's going on with them, something we'll highlight even more later on, but those tickets are hard to properly classify, hard to actually handle, and those are the ones that most often get skipped. The biggest problem I have with this is there is no accountability. If a ticket does get skipped, there's no real way for you as a manager to see that, or you as a dispatcher to see that. So if this process isn't getting followed, there is no accountability, and I hate that. We really need accountability. It's one of the biggest strengths of ConnectWise Manage as a tool is creating that accountability, and a centralized dispatcher will help us accomplish that. Now, some of you are saying that are out there doing self-dispatching right now, none of those first three apply to me. My team is perfect. They never break the rules. They always follow the process. Well, I still have some bad news for you. What happens if an emergency ticket comes in? Well, it's going to go to the back of the queue in front of or behind everything else that's already come in. Maybe a customer has submitted 4, 5, 6 tickets today already that are sitting in the queue. And maybe the first 3 were all submitted by Billy the intern. He's having some mouse problems. He's got a touchpad, but he doesn't like that his mouse isn't working. Well, the president of the company, he just submitted a ticket and he can't even log in. That is a much more pressing issue that you probably want your team handling right now. But if they're doing first in, first out, well, we're gonna have people taking care of Billy, and the president doesn't want that. Your team members would probably rather handle the more important issue. And honestly, Billy the intern doesn't want the attention either. So we need to make sure that we have a process that can account for emergencies that can happen anytime. And the truth is, until we pre-process those tickets, any ticket could be an emergency. So that's that problem with the first in, first out, which I heard many of you do have a triage process in place, which will help with that greatly, but still things can get missed. If your team is all working on a ticket currently and an emergency comes in, well, no one's grabbing a ticket right now because they're all currently engaged in a task. So that emergency will just sit there, even if it did jump to the front of the line. The line isn't moving right now. So without having someone dedicated to monitoring that board constantly, things get missed and emergencies can often slip by. So why central dispatch? This first point, I again can attest to personally. It makes my day so much easier when I know what I need to be working on as soon as I get into the office or as soon as I log in for the day. I have all my work ready for me as soon as I start, pre-assigned out to me, all lined up on my calendar. Another nice thing, no one is interrupted mid-ticket to answer the phone. Technicians like to focus on what they're doing. They don't want to feel like they're jumping around from one thing to the next, getting interrupted when they're really in a groove solving a problem to answer the phone and log a ticket for someone. Having a centralized dispatcher will kind of alleviate that stress. It gives that responsibility to someone who's not currently resolving issues. Big plus side I just stressed on our last slide, emergencies are identified as soon as they come in because every ticket is being triaged or pre-processed as it's created. And then my favorite part of this, we now have accountability every step of the way. We know who was responsible for doing each individual task, who needs to triage, who needs to work it, who needs to answer the phone. All these tasks are now better divided out amongst our team so we can focus in and be held accountable when processes aren't followed. There's no finger pointing, which is what we don't want. So all of this ties into our first best practice we're going to talk about, paint the day green. This refers to your calendar within ConnectWise Manage that your dispatchers will be looking at as they assign out tickets. As you assign out tickets to your technicians, you'll notice the color along the top here changes. As you fill up their calendar, it will change from red to yellow to green, and that's based on different thresholds that you can customize. These are customized in the scheduled colors setup table. I think by default, these are the percentages that exist. If they're less than 50% full for the day, they're red, indicating there's a lot more we can do to assign to them. Once they start to fill up, we'll go to yellow. And then once they're good for the day, we hit green. And you can, again, customize these percentages to match what your goals are. How booked should your service team be? And here's what that looks like in practice. The other best practice that we want to talk about is that my life is my calendar. We want to make sure that our technicians, they know what they need to do on their calendar, and it's not just tickets. If they have anything else that's going on, if they're out of the office for vacation, if there's any recurring meetings for the team, even if they have an appointment taking up part of the day, we want to make sure that is captured on the calendar itself. That way, your team can really track how much work there is available to assign out and how much more space there is to fill up that calendar. There it is. My life is my calendar, something I hope you are all living by. It makes your lives much easier when everything's up to date. That way people can just really quickly check and see what's going on at any given time and see when you are available.
Thanks, Mitch. So now I'm going to talk about how we start processing those tickets when they're coming in. As the dispatcher, as the service manager, we need to have eyes on them and make sure that we have all of the information that our techs can be successful on that ticket. So how often does your team get an email like this from customers? Urgent, please help now. This does absolutely nothing. If your techs are self-dispatching, they're either going to avoid this ticket because it has absolutely no information. It's one of those hard tickets, they don't know what's going on, or they're going to jump right on this ticket thinking it's urgent and skip the other emergencies that are in the queue. So we want to have a dispatcher looking at that and identifying those true emergencies and making sure that we're assigning those properly. So I have 8 things that we need to look at on our tickets, and let's just jump right into them. So the first thing that we're going to look at, the first part, is the company and contact. So when that comes in, that if it's coming in through your email connector, that's going to be that email address there. We want to make sure we have the right email address for all of our contacts in ConnectWise so that they're coming in with the right contact and company assigned. Another thing that's new in ConnectWise, if you aren't using it, I definitely think you should be, is these company and client type status alerts. These are great. So you see here we have a company that is in their first 30 days. That's going to tell the tech that, hey, we want to make sure that we're addressing this client quickly and efficiently and help them see the value of having our services. Also on this contact, it's a VIP. So like Mitchell was just talking about with Billy, our intern, and then the president comes in, if we're looking at a ticket and it says they're a VIP, we're going to want to make sure that we set that priority appropriately. And then lastly, this one also prefers calls. So when we finish this ticket, we want to make sure that we're picking up the phone and reaching out to them, not just sending an email telling them that it's done. So this is great information for your techs to have and for the who's dispatching to make sure that they know who's on the, who's here, who we're servicing at this point. And if you're picking up the phone and taking those calls from customers, the company and contact, starting with the contact, is a great way to set the conversation. It's going to be a lot faster to create that ticket. You're going to see the information and the history and any configurations and stuff that is associated with that client. So I know it often seems faster to just start opening that ticket and start with the problem. But I think if you slow down a minute and start with the company and contact, it'll go a lot smoother for you. So the next pod we want to look at is that service board pod. So, or the ticket pad, and in that ticket pad, we want to make sure we have it assigned to the right service board. This is another one of those things that with if it's coming in through the email connector, this is going to be auto assigned. So we want to make sure that we have the appropriate board with the appropriate email connector. If you're the dispatcher picking up that phone and is creating these tickets, this is going to come from whatever your default member board is set. So if you're finding that you're having to constantly be changing this board and it's just one more click, go into your member settings and change what your default board is, and it will save you some time in the future. The next thing we want to look at in this pod is the agreement. Now this hopefully is auto setting. Hopefully you're all using agreements to track that time that you're applying for, that you're using for customers. If this isn't auto applying, that's going to be something you want to talk to finance about. They can set it up so that the agreement defaults, that we make sure that all the time that we're putting it on this customer is being billed against the correct agreement, saves finance time down the road. So they're definitely going to be happier about that. Next, we want to look at the configuration. So you can see in this one, we don't yet have a configuration applied. All we have to do is click on that little plus sign there in our top corner. And then it's going to bring up a menu for us to just select our configuration from a menu, and then we can apply it right to the ticket. This is great for tracking if the configuration's having a lot of issues, and then maybe service or sales needs to reach out to them and say maybe it's time to replace this piece of hardware. So it's great information for everybody to have. Next, we're going to look at that priority. So we talked about that early on. We had that ticket that came in, urgent, please help now. Well, we're going to look at this priority matrix here. If it's a critical major business stoppage, definitely a high priority. But is it just one user or the whole company? These are things that we need to be aware of when we're assigning these. Maybe it's just Billy the intern with his mouse and it's just a little bit of an inconvenience. That's probably going to be a priority for. But if the president of the company can't get logged into his computer, that's definitely going to be a higher priority, and we want to make sure that gets addressed appropriately. Next, we need to look at that type, subtype, and item. Now, these categories are set from that service board. So that's why we want to make sure from the beginning that service board is set correctly. Type, subtype, and item are great for tracking what kinds of tickets your technicians are working. And if you have ticket templates that you want to apply so that you make sure that the service is consistent every time. So you can apply ticket templates that give tasks so you know your techs are taking the same steps every time and have a consistent process. So now that we've looked at all of this information, we have an idea of what's going on with the ticket. We need to update this summary. Urgent issue is not going to help our techs. It's not going to tell them anything when this is on their calendar. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, what did you give me? So by setting this and telling this, hey, user can't get logged in, that's a much more descriptive summary for this ticket and gives us a lot more information as to what we're working with and what we're dealing with here. There we go. See, and now we have the information that our tech needs. Finally, we're going to update our status. So in the new status, we haven't responded yet. So by setting this to something that we're ready to, tells us that we're ready to dispatch, it also stops our SLA timer that we have responded, we've acknowledged this ticket, which is great for your customers and having that information. And now you know what status is in, you know it's ready, it's been looked at, and you're ready to assign it out to a tech.
All right, so now that we have triaged or pre-processed all of our tickets, our next step is to start assigning them out to our team. Now, however, depending on the size of your team, you might have just a small team where everyone's working the same set of tickets, but as your team grows, you might have different sets of responsibilities within the team. Maybe it's based on seniority, maybe it's based on a set of skills they have, or maybe certain team members are certified to work with specific pieces of technology. As your teams grow and mature, this burden of memorizing who's responsible for what falls on the dispatcher's shoulder. And if they are required to just memorize everything, mistakes are going to happen, especially as your teams change. It's not going to be a static set of people. People grow, add new skills, add new certifications, people get promoted, new people come in. It's a constantly changing environment, and there's a better way. Relying on someone's memory isn't the best way to do it. A printed handout, a step better, but that's still static. That doesn't evolve with you. So we want to make sure that it's all captured in our one central source of truth, ConnectWise Manage, to make everyone's job, especially your dedicated dispatcher, their lives a little bit easier. And with that, I have a question for all of you. How does your dispatcher know who to assign tickets to today? What does that process look like? Based on level of experience, I hear that fairly often. They have a skills/role budgeted time matrix. Based on location, there's a tier system. So a little bit of everything. Someone mentions they're using a separate portal. So there's no one way to go about this, but a lot of those things you guys just talked about, we can track within ConnectWise Manage. And once it's tracked within Manage, your dispatchers can leverage this information very quickly from the dispatch portal itself, the place where they can see everything together, everyone they need to assign to at the top and the people at the bottom. For those of you asking, how do I answer these questions during the webinar? You're doing it right now. The responses you're typing in, I can see and read. So you're doing great. Keep it up. All right. So here on the service board, this is where you set up your teams. Your service boards can have one or more teams assigned to them over here on the Teams tab. So my help desk board right now is actually shared by these 4 different service teams I have at my company. My default service team handles most of the tickets coming in. I have a specific release team handling all the newer pieces of technology that we're working with. Whenever we need to send someone on site, I have a separate team listed out for that. And then I also have my green team. They're the ace in the hole for me. They handle all the super complicated stuff that goes outside of everyone else's typical responsibilities. If I click into a team, I can now see a list of the members assigned. And if I need to assign a new member, I can hop over to the Available tab and add members to the existing team. Teams will also have a team leader, and they can be set as the default if you want. From here, your dispatchers, or whoever you have dedicated to that role, something I meant to mention earlier that I forgot is, depending on the size of your company, it may not make sense for you to hire a specific resource just for dispatching, and that's fine. Maybe the dispatching process really only takes about 2 hours of work throughout the day. You don't need someone there for a full 8 hours. Instead, make sure you are assigning that responsibility to someone specific. I heard many of you are doing that already. Maybe this responsibility falls on the service manager or a senior tech, or maybe it rotates throughout your technicians. But the point is, one person should be responsible for that dispatching process so they can be held accountable to it. It doesn't necessarily need to be someone you hired as a dispatcher, depending on your ticket volume. But the important part for me is that that responsibility has been centralized to one specific spot. And whoever is responsible for that can now quickly find your teams using this team tag right up here. When we open it up, I can see a list of all the different teams in my system for the various boards, and I can toggle between them on the fly if needed. So if I see a ticket come in and I need to switch over to another team, it's very easy to click up here, and I'll see the new team members reflected right there in front of me. You also see these skills and certifications, which we'll go into right now. So here, to update the skills and certifications for your team, this is going to be done on the My Account screen. This is something that your team members can do themselves. You can also do it as a manager. You can go in and edit your team skills from their account screens, or you can allow them to update this themselves. Both systems will work for you. Once you're in here on the My Account, you'll see the skills and certifications along the top. If I click into the skills, here I can see what Andy here excels in: Microsoft Office, Cisco, SQL, you name it. This is where we can go ahead and start flagging what their skill level is and start tracking that. Certifications are going to work similarly, but we can also track when their certification expires and how far through that certification they are. Once all of this is in place, now we'll come back to our dispatch portal. When we pop this open, I can now create different combinations of skills, certifications, and teams and save them as filters. So again, as a dispatcher, I can come in and quickly just select the set of skills I am looking for, and will automatically filter my teams to show only the members who are qualified to work that specific issue. Again, we no longer have to memorize who does what or keep tabs of an ever-evolving list of skills, responsibilities, and certifications. Have it all saved within Manage so it can be quickly found, filtered, and leveraged to show exactly who you need when you need them. But wait, there's more. Let's say there's some weird issue that came in and you need to go ahead and narrow it down between just a couple people. We have a large team, I don't want to scroll around. You can use this quick filter up here to build a team on the fly. So if I need to see who between two people is available to handle this issue, I can very quickly pull up both of their calendars, do a quick comparison, and find out who the right resource is based on how far they are throughout the day, what work they're on, do they have any other meetings scheduled, whatever other information I might need to make that decision.
Thanks, Mitch. Now that we know how to set up our teams, let's look at dispatching those tickets, what that looks like. So I hope all of you are familiar with this, but if not, this is what the dispatch portal looks like. We have our calendar view on top and then that service board list on bottom. There's a lot of fun things that we can do with these two views. So let's dig in. So in the service board view on the bottom of your dispatch portal, you can still use all of those views that you already have created on your service board view, or on your service board tab. You go in, set the view, and we can find those tickets that are currently unassigned. We can also still set this as our default view. So whenever we're opening our dispatch portal, this is still going to be our default view, and we can find those tickets right away to get those assigned out. The other thing that we can do is we can still sort the tickets by oldest to newest. You see here, we have a couple tickets that have maybe been sitting out there stale a little while. They've been there for a minute. Those are definitely going to be tickets that, as the dispatcher, you're going to want to follow up with the tech and say, what's going on with this? Do we need to schedule more time? Can we close this out? Where's this going? That also helps you find those new tickets that need to be addressed, as well as those old ones that you need to check up on. Next, we can set the refresh rate on this. So if you are the dispatch, you have a lot of new tickets coming in, maybe you want this to refresh every 5 minutes. Otherwise, if you just have it, you're coming back and checking it periodically, we can set that to not refresh as quickly, but that's all up to you and your personal preference and how you want to use this board. Next, we have all of these right-clickable columns still available to us in the service board view or in this dispatch portal view. So right from here, right from this dispatch portal, we can right-click and we can change the status on a ticket. So maybe we called out Andy on his 90-day-old ticket. We can right-click right there in the status and change it to closed or whatever if we're waiting on parts and he forgot to update that himself. We can also right-click and update the service board from this screen. Great tool to make sure that we have it on the right board, right people are looking at it. Maybe you have a different dispatcher for a different board. You need to change that and get that over to the right place so that it's getting triaged appropriately. When we right-click on the time, that's going to be a little different than those other ones that are dog-eared here. It's going to give us the option to create a new time entry. Great for your techs, quick, easy way for them to enter their time if they're looking at the service board view. Also, if you right-click on ticket, that's going to open in a new window or a new tab so that you're not changing your view from here. So if you're multitasking, as most of us are during the day, gives you the opportunity to have multiple things open that you can be looking at. So you can open that ticket in a new tab, process it, and get it off and on its way to the next stage in the game. Next, that schedule column. So you see all these funny icons. It's not hieroglyphics. It's giving you information. So those red arrows pointed to the left, that's going to tell you something was scheduled in the past and nothing is scheduled in the future. Now, if that ticket is scheduled or says in progress, we're definitely going to want to look at that. That circle with the line through it, that means nothing is scheduled on this. If it's a new ticket, that's great. But if we see the status says that it's assigned, this is definitely something that we're going to look at and address. That green arrow, these are the ones we love. These are tickets scheduled in the future. Hopefully the tech is living their My Life is My Calendar, and they're going to close that out and enter their time and do everything perfect, because we all love those techs, right? So as I mentioned a couple times that we looked at that, we also want to look at the status when we're looking at this schedule. These two columns give us a lot of information right from this quick, easy view. Now, I don't know how many of you know this, but pro tip, you can move those columns. So you can drag and drop if you want that schedule and that status right next to each other so you can quickly make sure that they align. You just drag and drop and rearrange that however you want. Or if there's ones that you don't need to see, you can go into the settings and configure that a little more custom for yourself. So next, let's look at that calendar view. So Mitch already showed us how to set up our teams up here. So we have our techs that we're looking for. We have our techs that we need to assign these tickets out to. Well, we can just take them from that bottom screen and drag and drop them right up onto their calendar. So I see Amy still has a couple hours open on her calendar there. So I can drag and drop some tickets up to her calendar. When I do that, I'm going to get this pop-up for creating a schedule record. Now the default is 30 minutes. I have seen in the chat that some of you talked about that you assign 15 minutes for a ticket. You can absolutely update that here. Or if it's a more complicated ticket and you think they're going to need an hour or they need more time because they're going to have to go on site, we can update that here. And we have this little checkbox to send a status report to let the tech know. So when we create this record, we're going to get another pop-up if this status is checked. To send that tech an email. So now if your techs are all living the My Calendar is My Life, maybe we don't need to send them this email and clutter up their inbox. Maybe they don't want the emails. We can hit cancel or uncheck that box. But if it's a future ticket or maybe something that they need a little more information that's not in the ticket already, this is a great opportunity to give them that information and just give them that heads up that this ticket is coming. So just like down below, we have right-click options. So from the calendar, and this works both in the dispatch portal and on the text calendar, which will be great here in a minute. But you can see we can edit the schedule. So maybe something's come up, the user called and they need us on site, but they needed to move to next week. We can quickly open up the edit schedule, move that out to next week. If you're just moving it later in the days, maybe it's easier to just drag and drop. But there's lots of options here that we can just do right-clicking without having to dig fully into that ticket. As I mentioned, your text can do this from their calendar too. So, fun pro tip, they can enter their time just by right-clicking here. No more of those excuses, I didn't have time to enter my time. Right from their calendar, right-click, it's there, they are done.
All right, before we open it up for questions, I do have several key takeaways for all of you. What I think is the most important messages you can take away from this webinar. First and foremost, make sure you are painting the day green for your technicians. I cannot stress enough how much more efficiently your team will be working when they have their work lined up for them as soon as they step into the office. It lets them know what they need to do to hit the ground running, and it also kind of lightens the load mentally, allowing them to just focus on what needs to be done instead of deciding what needs to be done. It doesn't sound like much, but it goes a long way. Next, pre-process or triage those tickets as they are created. Every ticket is potentially a critical issue until you've investigated it. We don't know how important it is until we've looked, and that's why that pre-processing as soon as they're created is of the utmost importance, so those critical issues can get addressed appropriately. And then lastly, manage your teams with those skills and certifications so your teams can make sure they're working the correct tickets effectively, making sure the right resource is working the right ticket. All right, I saw some questions coming in. We've tried to answer a couple of them as we went along, but I will go ahead and start answering and demonstrating where I can those questions right now. If you have more questions, feel free to chime in. One person said, I want to book in 15-minute periods instead of 30 minutes. That we can do. Let me go ahead and show how that is done. So if I hop within Manage here and head over to the dispatch portal, by default, when we are assigning out tickets, it is always going to default to 30 minutes. However, during that assigning process, we can adjust that time as necessary. It can be as little as 5, as much as 8 hours, full day if we want. As far as time blocks on the calendar, the smallest increment we're going to see is 15 minutes. So if you're in luck, that 15-minute issue will be reflected on the calendar. So let's go ahead and assign this ticket right here. And we'll say 8:15 instead of 8. I don't need to send an email. There we go. And now we have that 15-minute block instead of the full 30-minute block you see next to it. Saw a question come in a bunch. Will this recording be shared after the meeting? Absolutely, and actually 2 different places. Everyone who registered will receive an email with a link to the recording, and this webinar will live in our video library for years to come. For those of you that don't know, which I assume is everyone who asked if this will be recorded, please allow me to show off our video library. Here on our University under Education tab, you can click the video library right here, and you will find a wealth of knowledge in the form of 30 to 60-minute webinars, such as this one right here, and 1 to 3-minute how-to videos focused on a specific task. You can filter by product, by what type of video you're looking for, and let's say we wanted to know more about the service desk, which I'm sure all of you do if you're here for Help Desk Dispatch. And here we have 30 webinars ready and waiting for you, all of you that are hungry to learn more.
Mitch, we have a question that came in that I'd love to address. So somebody's asking if the dispatcher has time in between incoming calls, what can they do? And I love this. I was the dispatcher, and that is the great opportunity of checking that schedule, seeing those things that are scheduled in the past, looking at those text calendars. This is a great time to nag them to enter their notes, enter their time, and close out those tickets. Get them off of your board and keep it clean. And that's a great thing to do in between taking calls and dispatching out other tickets.
Yeah, the schedule column you were talking about earlier, that little red arrow, Those are tickets that were scheduled days ago and we don't have a resource currently assigned. It's still open, and depending on the status, like most of these are new, but if we have, perfect example, scheduled in the past, but we also say it's still scheduled, that's a mismatch. It can't be both. One of those is wrong. That's a good candidate for something for you as the dispatcher to follow up on and see which one of those is true. Are we still working on it? Did we forget to schedule ourselves? Or did we finish and we forget to update the status? I saw several people ask about a feature you were showing off earlier, Lynette, those orange service alerts on tickets. So I will go ahead and show off how those are set up and configured. There are two different types. They are set at the company level and the contact level. So let me open up both right here. And let's find a company. How about Chris Craft Boats? Let me see if they have any alerts set up.
Mitch, we're still seeing your video library.
Oh, that is strange. How about now? Let me just unshare and reshare then.
While Mitch is doing that, one of the great things I love about the contact and company types is you can stack multiple ones. So as we saw, that one contact had both a preferred phone call and a VIP. So and you can have a status alert for up to 5 of each of those.
Perfect. So my screen should be coming through now. Please let me know in that questions pod if it's not. Those orange service alerts are tied to company types and contact types. Not every type will have an alert associated with it. This is something you can customize in the setup tables, but I'm fairly confident our VIP client does. So let me save that. And now if we hop over to the service side and I open up one of their tickets, we should see that orange alert up here in the top of the ticket. Here we go, VIP client. There's the drop down, and I can see it's tied to the company itself. These are also set up on the contact side. If I pull open one of my many contacts here, this type field is going to work the same way. Again, not all types will have an alert associated with them. This is going to be customized in the setup tables, and I'll show you a quick example of what setting up a service alert will look like. Can you sync your Outlook calendar to ConnectWise? Absolutely, and the sync is actually going to work both ways. Outlook will sync to ConnectWise, and ConnectWise will sync back to Outlook, keeping them both in sync. There's a bit of setup involved if you're not doing that today. I'll go ahead and see if I can track down a documentation page that'll walk you through what all needs to be done to get that in place. But let's take a look at that VIP company type we were just playing around with. There's my VIP client. So to turn one of these types into an alert, simply check the box and add whatever message we want. And that's it. Nice and easy. All right, let's see what other questions we have. Answered those, answered those, answered that, answered that. Talking about the service board refresh options, you have several options available to you. They can be set to refresh as fast as every 5 minutes, and this will be a refresh that happens automatically. So if you're just sitting there idling on the dispatch board, you'll see it update every 5 minutes. But we can also have a couple auto refreshes built in, which if you're a dispatcher, I'd like to have turned on. And that is every time I open up the screen, it refreshes, and every time I return to the screen. This is a big one. If I open up a ticket and I make some changes, when I hit back to the service board, by default, it's going to show me what I was looking at when I was last there. But if we select this box right here, It's going to be refreshing to whatever happened since I was last on the screen, which in my opinion, as a dispatcher, that's what I want to see. I want to see the most up-to-date information every time I come here. And selecting that here will make sure that's happening. All right, just going through some other questions that we've already answered or that we've answered in the chat. Here we go. This one's a little longer, so give me a second while I read through it. Is there a way to break up a schedule entry? For example, we schedule a tech for Monday through Friday for a project, and then an emergency ticket comes in for Wednesday. Currently, we have to close out the week-long entry and make a Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday entry. And see. Yes, unfortunately, that's going to be the best way to handle it. If you are using schedules as a week-long block, I'll show you guys an example of exactly what I mean. So let's drill into Abby's ticket right here. That's already on her schedule. It's going to come down to how you initially scheduled it. If you are scheduling a week as a single schedule entry, the only way to break it up is to turn that one schedule entry into two. So for Abby here, we'll say it was actually from Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. So this one schedule entry is now going to fill up her entire week, her full calendar. If something comes up in the middle, we need to split it up. We would then want to come into the schedule entry, say, okay, we're actually going to finish this up on Wednesday, start it back up on maybe Friday, so we can work on something else on Thursday. We'll need to create multiple schedule entries to kind of handle the changes that have happened since we initially scheduled it. Oh, I see a very important question in here. You answered it in chat, but I think it's worth calling out for everyone. Does Lynette have bunnies?
Yes, I do have one rabbit who is behind me. Luckily, he has been fairly well behaved for this whole thing, but yeah, he's a 3-year-old Holland Lop.
Another question I see is, how do you schedule out tickets if you don't know how long the issue will take? This is going to be a bit of guesswork, but we have some tools to make the guessing easier and more accurate. So you feel like you're completely in the dark right now. You have no idea how long these different issues take. I recommend you check out a report that Lynette alluded to when she was going through her pre-processing. And this leverages the type, subtype, and item on those tickets. If you are not classifying your tickets with that today, I recommend you start, because simply classifying them is going to give you a lot of useful information. Once you start classifying which type of tickets are which, you can then group them together in reporting, which is what I want to be doing right here. And that's what's going to empower me with a little bit of extra info. Now, I'm not sure how much data I have in this system, so I don't know what we're going to be getting back when I try this, but let's go ahead and just see what my system looks like right now. This report is going to group all of your tickets together by that type, subtype, and item distinction, and you can filter by service board as well if you want, which you probably would want to for your help desk. In this, I'm looking at everything just so I can get back as much stuff as possible so I don't get a blank report, and this is actually pretty good for me. So let's say I don't know how much time to assign for a different type of issues. I see a ticket comes in, it is a workstation issue. Well, I can see workstations right here. We had 7 tickets, it took 3 hours. With a little bit of math, I can tell you that comes out to be about, say, actually, I'm not gonna do the math in my head. No one wants that. But we have our 7 tickets and 3 hours. 3 divided by 7 takes us a little under a half-hour ticket. So scheduling a half hour for a workstation issue is a good place to start. Obviously, we're going to be wrong sometimes. Every issue is slightly different, but I can tell you from my history in this instance, on average, it takes us less than half an hour for every workstation issue. So once you start classifying your tickets, you can take a look at that data and see, based on the type of issue, how long do these typically take, and then you can kind of create a prioritization around that. Rather than pulling this up and doing the math, you can use a tool called auto templates, so that whenever your team applies a type, subtype, and item, the budget hours for the ticket is filled in for you. So you don't have to memorize how long to do each one. You don't have to do math every time you assign a ticket. You can build that into Manage, and then we can apply those budget hours to every ticket, so it's listed on the ticket how long it takes on average for your team. Any tips on keeping engineers from changing all their ticket statuses at 4:55 p.m. instead of while they're working the tickets? This is going to come down to how you measure your technicians' success. If you are measuring their success using SLA metrics, SLAs are going to be directly tied to the statuses. So you can very quickly and easily see who's dragging their feet when it's coming to updating those statuses. The engineers that are going to be changing the status as they work a ticket, first of all, as someone who was a technician themselves for a while on a support team, it's so much easier to update the status while you're entering in your time and entering your notes. But beyond that, it also reflected well on me because it showed me hitting my SLAs faster than the other technicians on our team. So setting up your metrics to reflect that behavior that you want to see is going to be the best way to encourage them to do that. And SLAs are a great way to track status changes that they're being done appropriately.
Mitch, we have a question about where that calendar color setup is located. Can you show us that?
I can. Popping back into my setup tables here. It is the schedule colors setup table. By default, we have the red, yellow, green, blue. You can go nuts, choose any of these colors you want, and choose what thresholds you want, and you can even go up to 5. And then those thresholds will change on the calendar as their members' calendars are filled up. One thing to keep in mind, you also do need to specify the schedule capacity for your different members, because that's what the percentage is based on. If I have 6 hours of my calendar filled up, but I don't have anywhere listed how many hours are supposed to be filled up, we don't exactly know what to do with that. We'll just say, okay, good, you're full. So we need to make sure that we come in and we set up a correct schedule capacity for those percentages to be based off of. And I'll show you what that looks like on a member right here. That's not daily capacity. I'm looking for schedule capacity. In this case, 8 hours scheduled a day is what I'm looking for, and that's what our percentages are then going to be based off of.
I see somebody asking about where to find the setup tables. So it's at the bottom of your menu there, that little gear. Chances are if you aren't seeing it, you might not have access to it, and that might be something that you have to ask your ConnectWise administrator about if you're the one that needs to be doing that, or maybe it's somebody else on your team that's responsible for updating those things.
Absolutely. What do you recommend for your dispatcher that is reactive most of the day? They don't necessarily have much work for them when they first come in, and they are simply reacting to stuff as they come in with a 1 hour SLA. In that case, I would recommend having your dispatch portal open and ready when you come in, having it set to refresh every 5 minutes, so that way you can capture those tickets as they come in. Make sure you are leveraging a view that shows you what you don't want to see, which is a new ticket sitting there. So right now I'm seeing all of my service tickets. I would want to flip this over to, I have an unassigned tickets view. That is perfect. In this case, I have some sales meetings those probably shouldn't be in a new status. Whoever created this template should have used my off-board status instead. But you'll want to set up your view to find all of those unassigned tickets. That way, when something pops up, you can assign it, and once you assign it, it no longer qualifies for the view, and it's off your board. And then when they're not busy assigning those out, go back to what Lynette mentioned earlier, those tasks you should be doing when you have that downtime. Someone asked what my preferred browser is when using Manage. I actually typically use the desktop version. There are 1 or 2 small features that are still only available in the desktop. My favorite of which is the fact that it will automatically load tabs along the top of the screen as soon as you sign in with the PIN. I'll go ahead and show you what I'm talking about right here. This little guy right here is only available in the desktop, and when I signed in, all of these tabs loaded up for me. That's just too convenient to give up. I am using my Firefox browser right now because I don't use Firefox ever, so it has completely cleared of data and I don't accidentally pull up anything I didn't mean to. Someone asked if you can default the scheduling to 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes. Unfortunately, no, the default is always going to be 30. However, if that is something you would like to see added to the system, a way to default how long that schedule time is, I would recommend you take advantage of our enhancement forums. Creating an enhancement request down here enables other partners to vote on the request to show our product team that, hey, this feature isn't just something I want, this is something many different partners want. Our product team looks through here and helps identify new features to add in. We have actually added over 700 different requests from here into Manage to date, and that number continues to grow. So come on in, hop into the requests in here, and before you add a new one, let's see if there is one out there already. 15-minute schedule. There we go. So someone has added this already. It doesn't have a lot of votes right now, but simply go ahead, vote it up, and that will show our team that, hey, this isn't just one person. A lot of people want to see this added.
I see somebody asked about a book for dummies guide for Manage. This, as much as we'd love it, there's not something published out there, but the university is a great resource. We have all of these videos. This video will be out there. There's a lot of how-to videos that are walkthroughs, as well as our partner kits. If there is something specific that you want more help, more information on, you can definitely check those out. We have links to documentation and even some checklists and stuff to help you along the way with some of that stuff.
Yeah, depending what you want to learn, there's a resource for you. If you're just getting started and you feel overwhelmed, our degrees are a great place to start. They'll walk you through step by step, slowly building upon what they taught you previously. They're very structured, so if you need guidance, this is where to go. If you feel like you know a lot, but there's one topic you don't know much about, that's where those partner kits come into place. Maybe you've never touched the customer portal before. Well, we have everything you need to know about the customer portal all grouped together in one spot right here. So depending on what your goal is, we have a resource out there to match your needs.
So no book for dummies, but definitely the university website is a great resource.
Someone mentioned that their technicians are frustrated with the amount of emails that ConnectWise Manage sends, and I get that. That is something you do have control over as an organization, though. You want to make sure that you are fine-tuning the, I'm going to say, noise to make sure that it isn't noise. Make sure that your team members are only being alerted with the information that makes sense. One tool that is relatively newer that I think is worth taking advantage of is within the workflow rules, you can start customizing exactly how much information you're going to be sending and whether or not that information is going to be coming through as an email or maybe as a notification. One way, in my opinion, to cut down on some of the noise is to diversify how that information is sent out. Maybe not everything needs to be an email. Maybe an in-app notification within Manage is better suited to alerting someone of what's going on, where an email might be burdensome. So kind of starting to diversify out from exclusively email notifications might help cut down on some of that noise, which coincidentally helps people read more of the emails they receive rather than just tune them out.
Mitch, we had a question about a recommended list of types, subtypes, and items, and I think this is a great opportunity to show them the marketplace. So don't recreate the wheel if you're just getting started and you're not sure what sort of service types you should have out there for your service board, or maybe you're starting a security board or a work operations board. By going out to the market exchange and the marketplace and the partner exchange, we can see what others are doing on their service board and import those right into our instance of ConnectWise Manage and start using those.
Yeah, it's a question we get here asked all the time. What is everyone else doing? Marketplace is a great way to check that out. We have pre-configured service boards, workflow rules, all this great stuff right here. To import these in, you will need, this is one of those couple of things I mentioned, you do need to be in the desktop version of Manage. So open up the desktop version of Manage. Under that system module, you'll find the marketplace. And from there, you can import directly in from the marketplace into your instance of Manage. Everything you import will be off by default. So you can go in, take a look, make changes, delete it if you don't like it, and really start seeing how everyone else is using Manage. Anything you see with a CW right here has been uploaded by us, but there's stuff that have been uploaded by partners within here as well.
That is another thing that A, you have to have access to the system module. B, as Mitch said, you have to be in the desktop version, not the web version. And you do have to have access to it from your administrator. So if you're not seeing it and you're in the desktop version, you might need to talk to somebody about that.
All right, looks like we have answered some of these, so I'm going through here.
So I see a ticket about asking about having a dispatcher per board or how you see multiple boards. So the way that you can see multiple boards, Mitch, can you help us out there? If the boards are per department, you can definitely sort it just per department and see all boards under that. But there are a couple other ways that you can look at that.
Yeah, so right now on this view, as you can see, I have sales board, help desk board, command board, all my boards are showed at once. I can select a single board right here. And so right now that feels very all or nothing because it is, but you're not limited to that. If you need to create a subset of boards, that can be accomplished with a view. Here you can build out and pick and choose which specific boards you want to see, and then you can select that view and then filter down to only tickets on those boards. So you can kind of set up whatever combination, as many as few boards as you need. All right, sorry, everyone, just going through. Been a lot of questions, some of which we've answered. I'm trying to clear those out. Got that one. Got that
I
one.
love our level of audience participation today, though, Mitchell. I'm glad everybody's excited about help desk and dispatching.
Do you have any suggestions on how to reduce playing phone tag with clients? My best suggestion is to just send an email every time you make a call. That way you get it documented in the ticket, and if there is anything specific you wanted to say or wanted to ask, get that in there as well, so that if they do need to respond and they can't get on the phone with you, you've given them something to work with and they have something to respond to. There's nothing you can do to guarantee they'll be available when you call, so you make the best of a bad situation and just make sure things are moving forward, even if it's just a smaller step than would have been had you been able to get them on the phone. And added benefit, get some accountability because it's all documented in the ticket now. Are there reports for text status, completions compared to other texts, time to complete? There's a lot of questions in a lot of reporting questions in there all in one. I would recommend checking out a webinar we did relatively recently, which you can find in that video library I mentioned earlier. Let me see if I can pull it up. Head to manage, head to webinars, and we want reporting. Reporting as a service manager is going to give you what I think is our most popular service reports on that service side. So you can see tech progress from a variety of different angles, measuring are they working through their tickets effectively. So check that out, and that should put you on the right track of where some of the most effective managed service reports are found. Can you show multiple teams at once on the dispatch portal? This one I'm not sure about, so let's check. So if I do all teams here, let's see what I can do. And it looks like it's going to be either all or one as far as specific teams go, unfortunately. But we can leverage other things like these skills and certifications to narrow down the members within those teams.
Or if you have a smaller help desk and you're just wanting to put all of your people on one, you can definitely do that by the choose your own adventure that Mitch showed us, that we could just add the members from there.
Yes, that's true. Actually, we may be able to use this select more teams. I was wrong. So you can find your team on here and then select more teams on top of that as well. So you can combine teams with this option here. Someone asked, is there a best practice for which teams and skills you should create? There is no best practice for that. It is going to come down to what your needs are and what distinctions you find yourself wanting to make. When a ticket comes in, do you ever wish you could quickly find someone who met blank criteria? That's a good candidate for when you might want to break out a new skill or a new team. So now you can very quickly filter on that in the future. So that is going to be very personal to your business and what your needs are. Someone asked if you can add the company type and contact type to the service board view. That one I'm not sure about, so I'm double checking that right now to see if those columns are available. I didn't see them on my default view, but if you hit this little gear icon, you can see the hidden columns as well. So I'm checking to see if those are in my hidden section. It does not look like the company type and contact type are available to filter tickets on here, unfortunately. Those are just going to be alerts for once the ticket has been opened up.
We do have a question, can techs be members of more than one team? And absolutely, we can have the same tech on multiple teams or multiple techs on same teams. That's not a problem.
All right, well, I apologize that we were not able to get through all of the questions. I really appreciate everyone joining and being so active in our webinar, but we are out of time. So I do want to thank you all for attending, and I look forward to seeing you all at a future webinar, or at an IT Nation event. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.